Well, thank you very much, Mav, and I hope you do start to feel better here. Um, but for those listening here, I'm very glad to welcome David Garay from Raft Finance Protocol. Raft Finance is a DeFi protocol that lets you generate R, which is a USD stablecoin, by depositing liquid staking tokens such as rETH as collateral. This in turn allows you to create a capital efficient way to borrow while keeping your staking rewards. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Ken. Thanks very much, guys, for hosting me. Maybe I can give you guys a little bit of a an overview about who we are and how did we come to build Raft before we jump into it. So, my name is David. I am one of the co-founders of Raft. Basically, what Raft does on like a high level is that you can take your Rocket Pool ETH and you can use that as collateral, pay a one-time borrowing fee, and you can borrow our own native stablecoin R and do a bunch of different things with it. Why it is interesting from your perspective is that we offer users a way to borrow a stable coin and pay only a small one-time fee instead of having to pay ongoing interest. So it's suitable for those people who, for example, want to are bullish on ETH, bullish on Rocket Pool ETH as well, want to keep their staking yield and just pay a long time borrowing fee, and then borrow against that collateral in like a capital efficient way, keep your staking yield, and then use the borrowed stable coins for whatever purpose you want. You can use it for your expenses and use the staking yield to pay back the loan at a later date. So there's all sorts of interesting things, but I guess we'll go into the nitty gritty and the details in a bit.
Yeah, maybe it's a very good introduction and a way to kind of explore this a little bit more. I always enjoy hosting these calls where we have ecosystems and integrators for the Rocket Pool rETH because I get to learn a little bit more about this. And I guess one question I have is how does your stablecoin R differ from the other USD stablecoins that are out there?
I think one of the key differences is that we only use censorship-resistant collateral for the stablecoin. So maybe taking one step back, we have all sorts of different kinds of stablecoins in DeFi today, starting with centralized ones like BUSD or USDC or USDT that basically are a representations of money held in a bank account or a guarantee by a company that its backing it exists. But as we have seen with a bunch of different examples in the past, like there are certain issues with that, transparency, and also regulatory risk. We've seen what happened with USDC. We've seen what happened to its dollars that were backing it, a couple months ago when it depegged. So what we wanted to do is just to fill the market and fill this gap that currently exists, and just focus on creating a stablecoin whose collateral cannot be censored, so that people who hold the stablecoin can actually be confident that it is always backed, it's always transparent. So the people who hold their stablecoin can get comfort that it always has full backing. So it is a very DeFi native way of how we think about holding and being exposed to the US dollar.
And is it fair to classify it as an algorithmic stablecoin?
I think, there are multiple mechanisms at place that keep the price at $1. I think algorithmic, the term itself has a bad name to it, and I think that comes partly from the whole UST Terra thing, which was characterized as the algorithmic stablecoin. And if we think about the term algorithmic, that normally means that it's not backed by anything. So it doesn't have any collateral that's backing up its value. It's mostly maintained by some sort of weird mechanism that is not completely understood, and it is subject to all sorts of issues. Our stablecoin is a stablecoin that's completely backed by collateral. So we basically guarantee through redemptions that every single $1 worth of stablecoin can always be redeemed for $1 worth of collateral. What that means from a holder's perspective is that they can always be sure that if they have 1R, they can basically go anytime to our UI and they can redeem that that stablecoin for $1 worth of collateral. Why that's important is that this way they don't have to check the market price. They always know that this backstop mechanism always exists, and that will make them whole regardless of what the market thinks is the fair price for the stablecoin itself. So it's like we've taken one step from the algorithmic stablecoins and went for the over collateralized model, which is way safer. Combine that with redemptions, and then people can be sure that it is always backed.
Oh, excellent, excellent. And I guess the proper term would be what, a collateralized stablecoin?
Sure,
Is that the generic term? Okay. Maybe it would be helpful to kind of walk us through just how it works here. Is, for instance, if I'm a holder of rETH and I would like to keep that asset, but I need access to some of that collateral, some of that value. How do I use the protocol? Just kind of walk me through it visually. What would I do?
I think it's what we have tried to do is to keep the user experience super simple and try to simplify every single step on the way, so that people who aren't really familiar with DeFi and maybe they are just like pure holders of Rocket Pool rETH, they can just come to the protocol, they can come check out the UI, and they can do it in a very easy and simple way. But on the high level terms, how it works is like you would deposit your collateral first. So you would choose, let's say you want to deposit $10,000 worth of Rocket Pool rETH, and then decide to take out a loan against it, which would be 5,000 R. In that case, your position would be over collateralized 200%, so it would be pretty safe. It would need to, the price of rETH would need to drop significantly for you to be liquidated and lose your collateral. And in this case, you would pay a small borrowing fee. I think in this case, it's like 1% on your 5,000 rETH. So what that means on practical terms, on your 5,000 R. So what that means on practical terms is that you would have to repay 5,050 R when you decide to do that. And that might be any time in the future. So you don't have to repay it, in a year's time. You can keep your loan outstanding for up to whatever, like 5 years, 10 years, whatever is your preferred term. And then on the UI side, you would just, all of these is like abstracted away. So you can do everything in a single transaction. Choose how much to deposit, choose how much you want to deposit, choose how much you want to borrow, fill in all those things. The protocol will show you your liquidation price. It will show you your collateralization rate, your risk, everything else. Click execute, and then it's done. The rETH is locked in the smart contract. You keep earning all your staking yield, so you don't take any of that. And then you get minted the R that you can then use for whatever purpose you want.
Okay, a few follow-up questions on that. The first two are just in regards to the collateralization rate. How much of the deposit can I borrow, and at what rate does liquidation become possible?
So the minimum collateralization rate that we require at this point is 120%. That compares favorably to other big protocols for staking derivatives. I think that's probably the lowest one right now that is available in DeFi. That's sort of a conscious design choice on our side, because we want to make sure that people get liquidated at a later date, at a later time. So we would require a more severe drop compared to other protocols out there. So we create like a more capital efficient way to borrow. What that means on practical terms is that you would need to have $12,000 of worth of rETH to borrow $10,000 worth of 10,000 R, basically. Anything once the price drops below that threshold, then you basically lose the excess collateral on the top while you maintain the exposure to your R, which obviously you can keep. So I think what we have tried to do here is, first of all, encourage people to keep their collateralization ratio way higher. So we don't recommend anybody, obviously, to take out a loan at 121% collateralization ratio. We always recommend people to keep it at 180, 200, but compared to other protocols like Aave and Maker, which have way more severe collateralization requirements, ours is actually better for users. So it's like a more friendly experience, and we need to have a more severe drop for users to be liquidated.
Excellent. And I suppose one of the advantages of using a liquid staking token as your collateral is that, assuming you have that buffer between liquidations there for volatility in the market, over the long term, right, your primary asset, your collateralized asset, is still earning interest, and so hopefully that continues to add to that buffer over years, over time.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the user base that we want. So we want to encourage people who are long on the price of ETH, and then also long on the staking yield at the same time, to take out a loan, pay a one-time fee, right? And then at a later date, they can just choose to repay whenever they want. And yeah, it's good to be, comfortable with all sorts of different risks, but it's all in there in the protocol itself. So you can check out the docs, check everything else, make sure to know how the protocol works, obviously. Yeah, the idea is to keep things simple and as simple as possible.
Yeah, and then I think you mentioned it, but just as a follow-up, how is the loan origination fee or the rate charged to mint or borrow against my rETH by minting R?
So it's this fee is basically added onto your debt. So what that means is if you take out a loan for 5,000 R and the fee is 1%, you will just have to pay back 5,050 R at the end. How that works is you can just either buy the extra R from the market, and we're also working on a front-end function that's going to be going live in the next week or two, which basically allows people to force close their position. So what that means is that in case you don't have enough R to pay back the loan, you can basically use the price gains or the appreciation in your collateral, sell part of your collateral to settle the debt at the same time. So that's a UX improvement that will be coming through, so people can close these loans super easily by selling off part of their collateral automatically.
And that rate that is charged, it's just a one-time charge, no matter how long I have my position open or my loan open. I incur no other cost other than that kind of one-time cost. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's just to keep things simple for the users and to encourage people taking out longer-term loans instead of doing shorter ones.
Interesting. And then, are there any other features to Raft Finance that might be of interest to the folks listening on the call here from the Rocket Pool community? Are there abilities to do a flash loan or a looping
Sure.
Borrow through a couple of times?
Yeah, so we actually eliminated the need for looping altogether via our flash minting design. So R is a coin that can be flash minted, so you don't need to have any sort of liquidity in a DEX to flash mint. So basically, a flash mint is just a flash loan that's provided by the protocol. It carries a very small one-time fee, but what it allows people to do is to, first of all, carry out liquidations very efficiently. So if you don't have to source your own R, either by holding it in your wallet or flash loaning it from Balancer or something like that. You can basically get a flash loan from the protocol to liquidate and to carry on liquidations. We have multiple people who are already doing liquidations, and liquidations are working very efficiently. But obviously, if you have anybody in the community who wants to get involved and is more tech savvy and wants to run their own liquidation bot, they can obviously do that as well and get involved. And I think the rewards for liquidators at the moment are one of the highest of any protocol out there. And if you want to compare to more traditional lending protocols. So that's one thing. That's one of the things that people can get involved with. The other important feature that we have is called one-step leverage. That also utilizes the same mechanism. So we have flash minting. We basically flash mint R and then swap that for collateral, deposit that into the protocol, and then repay the flash loan. It's a complex transaction that's abstracted away from the user, but what it manifests in is a product that lets people leverage up on the collateral in like a single transaction. That feature is going to be released also in the next 2 weeks. So for people who want to leverage up on their rETH, they can do that in a simple transaction. On the UX side, the way that how that will look is that you can just deposit your collateral. Let's say you want to deposit like, let's say 10 rETH, and we're going to have a little slider so people can go from like, 1x leverage is the default, but you can go up to up to 6x, I think, in this point with 120% collateralization ratio. And then you can just click execute, and then the protocol will do everything automatically for you. So you don't need to do anything. You don't need to loop and spend all of this gas and do a bunch of different transactions where you deposit rETH, you borrow R, you swap the R to rETH, you deposit that again, and then keep repeating and repeating. All of this will be done in a single transaction for people, so they can just like choose, what sort of exposure they want. The protocol will show you, your liquidation price, your fees, and obviously, since you're only paying a one-time fee, this is going to be very competitive with all the offerings that Aave and Maker has, for example, for leveraging on these staking derivatives. So that's going to be one of the flagship features of Raft that's going to be coming soon, and all the volumes for the stablecoin and everything else will come from there as well. We're already seeing like. I think today it's like $1.5 million of volume on R, and our balancer pool has like $40 million of liquidity. So there's a very healthy amount of liquidity out there already. But I think we're gonna hopefully see more and more of that.
Wow, interesting. One of the things I couldn't figure out when doing my research is does Raft have a governance token or a native token itself?
No. So actually, we have announced that Raft will have a token, but it's part of our longer-term decentralization plan to put one out, and obviously involves very careful design about how exactly you want to decentralize, which you obviously want to do. But yeah, just keep up to date with all the announcements. So I would tell people and just check the announcements, and hopefully something will come through soon. Yeah.
Okay, and then a few last questions. Is Raft, is it on mainnet, or will parts of the protocol be accessible on some of the layer twos?
So it's a mainnet first protocol. The reason why it's like that is that we wanted to first of all keep the protocol decentralized. I think like in any sort of decentralized stablecoin design, it's very important that we don't have any sort of censorship risk. And at this moment, none of the L2s I think are decentralized enough for us to consider deploying the stablecoin there directly and all the mechanisms. The other constraining factor is obviously liquidity. So there isn't enough liquidity on any L2s in any of the collateral types that we have. At the moment, that things might change in the future. It's very well possible that there will be more liquidity on L2s in the future, in which case we can consider deploying there. That being said, what we want to do is to work more with other ecosystems and try to bridge our stablecoin there and create use cases natively on different L2s that people actually use for a variety of purposes. But I think the focus right now is on using native assets only, uncensorable on mainnets, and then in the future we can see if we can expand.
Okay. Is there anything that you feel is important for the Rocket Pool community to know about Raft that we haven't had a chance yet to touch on today's call?
I think just in general, I think it's very useful for people to familiarize themselves with all sorts of lending borrowing options. And I think like we offer one of the most attractive options out there for people to go ahead and and take out a loan, pay a small fee, and keep their staking yield in case they want to pay for their daily expenses, they want to use their or in DeFi, or they want to use it for any sort of other purpose to increase the capital efficiency of their rETH holdings. So I think like in general, we kind of touched on everything, but it's yeah, it's just I think a matter of education. So we try to present this option out as a viable one and a capital efficient one, a cheaper one, and cheaper in terms of gas fees as well compared to all the traditional options out there. But yeah, I think that's everything.
Okay. And then if folks wanted to get in touch with you or find out more about the protocol, what's the best way to do so? Do you have a Discord, or should they follow you on Twitter, or what's the best way to learn more about the protocol?
Sure. I think like we have Raft here as the one of the listeners here after me. So yeah, give that guy give our Twitter a follow. I think that's the best way to keep in touch with all the developments. We have a Discord, we have a Telegram. Visit our website raft.fi, which has all the links, all the social links, and kind of has a very nice summary of all the core features of the protocol. It has a bunch of different links to people who want to get involved, either as a front-end operator, a liquidator, or just familiarize themselves with how to use the protocol. And we also have a very, very extensive documentation as well, which can be found on docs.raft.fi. But I think, yep, that's probably everything.
Okay. Well, I certainly invite anybody. We've got a fair number of people in the audience here, and so if anybody has a question, feel free to kind of raise your hand to be a speaker. We've got some time here we could explore a little bit more on there. And certainly I just learned here that I can push my finger over the Raft user that's listening in the audience here and just follow them directly from within the Twitter spaces.
Yeah, that's a cool feature.
Pretty neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that one. Yeah, it is absolutely fascinating for me to see as the entire liquid staking token ecosystem continues to evolve. There's kind of layers in the finance sector, right? And it seems like that there's a number of protocols now specializing at borrowing via a collateralized stablecoin model against those LST tokens. And so it's very interesting to see this ecosystem develop and start to mature over the years. And I guess, David, one last question I have, because I don't see anybody from the audience coming forward, is where do you kind of see this evolving to in the next 5 years? Do you see growth in this sector? Are there some other finance models that aren't yet developed besides just stablecoin borrowing?
Sure. I think like there will be, first of all, I expect a severe growth in staking participation, first of all. So staking participation is pretty low. I think it's climbing, but it's climbing very slowly. Obviously, ETH is a very mature asset compared to all these proof of stake networks out there that were launched later, so it takes a little bit longer. There are longer queues to get involved in staking. So first of all, staking participation will grow. The next step is probably that liquid staking participation will grow, and I think obviously Rocket Pool will also grow, hopefully at a much higher rate than the staking participation itself. And what drives that is creating useful DeFi native applications for Rocket Pool ETH, so that people actually choose to stake in this way instead of staking in directly with or running their own node or directly through non-liquid staking. That will also lead to the growth of this genre of LSDFi, where we're part of that, but we'll have more and more applications. So I think like overall there's a tremendous growth opportunity here for the sector itself. Stable coins, lending, borrowing. We've seen Pendle with speculation on the rate of yield. That will be a very interesting one as well. And all of these other new things that we haven't even thought about will probably start popping up soon. And obviously, the stablecoin is this is the one that obviously has product market fit and leveraging as well. as we've seen with all the TVL that Aave and Maker has with using staking derivatives as collateral. And then I think there is like a, as the ETH network grows, price grows, hopefully we get another bull market coming. We'll have like it's just like that I can't even express like the possible growth here, but I think we are all set for a very nice next couple of years at least.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you with some of those comments. One of the sites that it reminded me of is one I'd recently come across called validatorq.com. That's one word, validatorq.com. I want to say might be a Henny Abu creation, but apologize if I have the creator of this wrong. But it was interesting. I just looked that Ethereum just passed only about 17% of the Ethereum staked, and it kind of reminded me of your comment that I'm surprised it's as low as where it is. But on the same sense, the validator queue has been going absolutely strong with about 45 days for the past month in queue, and it doesn't seem to be stopping. No matter how many validators we add, it seems to be just as many entering the queue as they are exiting the queue or making it out of the queue. So it's I don't know how long that sustained just full onboarding growth will continue for validators, but right now it doesn't seem to have any signs of letting up.
Yeah, it's very, very encouraging to see that for sure.
Yeah. Well, David, again, thank you very much for coming and spending a little bit of time with the Rocket Pool community. We're very excited to have your protocol on with us as another way to borrow against our staked ETH.
Thanks very much, guys. Thanks, Ken, and thanks for hosting us. Once again, check out our website, raft.fi. You'll see all the information there. And then I guess I'll give the word back to you for the second part of the call.
Yeah, perfect. You guys are welcome to stay on or drop off, but we do have a couple of pre-biweekly things to go through. I don't know, Mav, if you're back to the land of living with us here.
Sure am.
Excellent. So Mav had shared with me kind of a pre-draft of the biweekly, and maybe we'll just go in the order that they're there, but we'll save the R&D section for when Langers is able to join, hopefully a little bit later here. And it sounds like he might have some news to share with everyone here. But let's start off first with the Smart Node. Anything in the Smart Node releases that you feel is important to highlight here?
Well, there was one release since the previous biweekly, which was 1.9.7. That was updates using Prism or TQ, or for everyone else. That will, as always, check out the patch notes, so you can find that in Discord under the releases section, and then Joe also has the notes on GitHub available. The other part of the Smart Node was around some of the client updates since 1.9.7. So in particular, Nimbus, Lodestar, and Mav Boost did put out some upgrades, and Joe mentioned for everyone to potentially, or who might be affected by that, to have a read through, and there's an option there to kind of push those updates manually should you feel so inclined. And again, the same resource will be there in Discord for people to have a read through.
Yeah, one thing I'll comment on is, as a Nimbus user myself, I did notice a difference here with this latest release of Nimbus. It seems to use a little bit more consistently and more CPU horsepower or processing time. But I also noticed it's a little bit more consistent as to when in the block it actually sends its attestations. So don't know quite what to make of it, but it's clear they made some changes in the way that it's actually functioning. So this one does seem to have some performance improvements in it. So I definitely want to encourage folks that haven't had a chance to read those patch notes to maybe look at it, or I suppose here we should be getting pretty close to 1.9.8. I think Joe was hinting that it might be coming soon. I don't know, Mav, if you know any more details on that.
Yeah, I think it's usually just a day or two after each bi-weekly update that a new smart node version gets pushed out. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that is out soon.
Yeah, I was thinking, in the industry, there used to be this thing called Patch Tuesdays. Maybe that was a Microsoft thing, and so it might be update update Tuesday on the biweeklies or whatever.
Yeah, maybe. I guess, yeah, it could make sense just based on the day of the week. I'm not sure, but yeah, I do know a couple of team members, including Langers. I'm not sure if Joe had any plans for the 4th. Can't quite recall. Maybe that'll slow things down a little bit, but yeah, shouldn't be too far away.
Yeah, all I know is the moment that Joe does release 1.9.8, we'll see a number of updates from the client teams immediately afterwards. That is absolutely predictable at this point.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. Maybe let's talk a little bit about integrations here. A couple more integrations continue to happen. What are some of the ones you want to highlight, and kind of where do you see this space growing with this ecosystem integrations?
Well, obviously we have one noteworthy integration by way of Raft, as we've just discussed during the first part of this call, and that's kind of part of a wider theme where we do see different protocols supporting rETH as collateral to mint various tokens, whether that's a stable coin that's pegged to the US dollar or to ETH or to something else. There have been another couple of announcements recently in terms of what you can do with your rETH. So we had Davos Protocol and Prisma Finance as well. So there are another couple of examples, and yeah, I feel like maybe this isn't the end. I wouldn't be surprised to see kind of more rolling through in terms of the asset being used to collateralize these tokens. rETH is obviously a pretty attractive option. If you look through the liquid staking token ecosystem, it's probably good to remember that there are a lot of protocols out there, a kind of growing list of protocols, but at the same time, for an asset to be kind of useful as collateral, it does have to exist for one. It has to kind of have been launched and live, and ideally a little bit battle tested. So yeah, there's a much smaller subset of kind of suitable collaterals. And we're seeing, protocols recognize that rETH certainly falls into that camp, and hence the kind of long list of new integrations that's gone back a few weeks at least.
Yeah, I very much enjoy when we actually have these integrated protocols actually come onto the community call. I feel like we get a little bit more personal connection with them, as well as a chance to kind of understand or explore their protocol a little bit more. So I think it's great that we've got such, kind of a lineup coming, and a couple of protocols that I haven't heard of. Although for me, that's not something new. I'm very much a neophyte in the DeFi space here, but I'm looking forward to learning a lot more about some of these new recent integrations here. Maybe on to governance here. This seemed to be the big topic in the biweekly update. Lots of things here. Where in the governance section would you like to start?
Yeah, for sure. I don't even know if I managed to capture all the updates. I think there may have been a couple of things that happened overnight, but I will just quickly mention. Just remember, there's another couple of integrations we're talking about. So probably everyone is familiar with Silo. They have announced that they're supporting rETH on Arbitrum. So that's potentially another avenue if you already have assets over on that L2. Yeah, so good to see, I guess, an increasing number of integrations outside of mainnet as well. Obviously, right now, what's gas doing? Pretty low, I'm guessing. Yeah. But as we kind of discussed, if you look forwards in terms of the increased activity that might take place on the blockchain or on mainnet, It's all very well to be comfortable with gas fees now, but if you add a zero on the end, I feel like some people may be pushed over to L2s if they're not there already. So it's good to have, I think, a presence there in anticipation of what will likely be increased use at some point in the future. And then the second one worth mentioning was another liquid staking token index. So this is, I think our first one was Index Coop, and there have been a couple since then. This one was created by BlockSwap, so they allow you to use your rETH to mint an index token if that's something you're interested in doing. But yeah, that aside, we can probably jump to governance now.
Yeah, no, thank you. I scrolled too fast and skipped those two integrations. But yeah, maybe start with governance here. There's been some active stuff on the GMC side of the house. You want to brief us a little bit on those?
Yeah. So there's certainly been over the past few days a lot of new posts in the DAO governance forum, and a few of them are to do with the GMC. So I guess first of all, we do have round 3 open. So whether that's a grant or a bounty or something retrospective, you can now put a submission in until 15th of July. So just over a week or 10 days or so to get them in. And then something that the GMC have done, which looks pretty good, is in terms of grants that are kind of being renewed for each round. So, and it doesn't make sense for work that's remaining relatively constant and is proven to submit using the existing kind of complete application. Kind of a lot of work to fill out all those areas, and also, I suppose, puts a bit of a drain on the GMC as well to process it. So there's a new template that's available that's more tailored for grants that are being renewed for each round. So check that out on the DAO governance forum as well. And then there was
one thing I kind of add on this thing is the GMC as kind of starting out, and as a GMC member myself, it's always a little bit of an iterative process here. And one of the things I think it's really trying to do now is to make these cycles continuous or much more frequent, so you don't have to wait just for these quarterly openings. But more importantly for the applicants here is to make the process, I think, a little bit more interactive, where folks should always do their research ahead of time and try to engage with the community about the need and the purpose and function of their applications. But they could be a little bit less worried about hitting all the salient points initially. I mean, you certainly want to do your best, but if a grant is a little bit off scope or needs a little bit of improvement, there's hopefully going to be now a little bit more interactive process in which that feedback could be given in a little bit more responsive and kind of back and forth manner to help the applicants refine that grant for final approval. And I think those improvements are really going to help not only kind of focus and make certain that the work done is really to the benefit of the Rocket Pool community, but also kind of help the applicants in reaching that success point of having a grant successfully funded. So I think it's going to be a really good grant round. If you've been thinking about a way to contribute to Rocket Pool, I'd certainly would encourage everybody to think about it and start engaging in this next round that's open. But Mav, go ahead.
Yeah, sounds good. So what else did we have under governance? Actually, I should probably at this point jump to some of the votes which are live and will be announced shortly via Discord. But there are 3 snapshot votes currently live at vote.rocketpool.net. So these are to implement the kind of result of a lot of work that's been going on the governance side over the past few months. There are three kind of related votes, and really the best way to understand them is to read through all of them. They are pretty important. There is a lot of detail, and they do interact in a particular way. So if anyone is participating in Rocket Pool governance, regardless of what we discuss right now on the call, it's a really good idea to read these through from top to bottom, including the full RPIP. Because as I said, they're quite significant. I guess potential updates to the protocol, assuming they pass. And as usual, there's a 2-week voting period, so you have until around 17th of July or so to get your votes in and help us to reach quorum one way or the other. So two of the votes are kind of similar, RPIP 23 and RPIP 24. So these are to implement the PDAO and ODAO charter respectively. So PDAO being obviously the protocol DAO, the node operators who can have their say in Rocket Pool governance, and then the ODAO being the Oracle DAO. So there's already been a few votes coming through already. Important to note, probably, first of all, reading the RPIP and reading the charter is probably a good idea for everyone. Even if you are a liquid staker, it's a good kind of opportunity to get up to speed if you haven't already read some of the drafts that have been circulating around. And then for the ODAO vote, that's a little bit of a different one to what we're used to. So if you're part of the PDAO, you can vote on this RPIP as like a signaling only. So the ODAO members will vote on this, and that will decide the outcome. Obviously, the revised charter has been drafted with input from ODAO members, so don't anticipate any concerns there. But this is governance after all. You never know. The third one is a change to how some of the inflation is paid out. So important points to note here is, first of all, there's not going to be any change to node operator share of RPL inflation, but the ODAO share will be reduced. So one of the questions that has been floating around is what to do with this excess RPL. So there's also been a discussion on the DAO Governance Forum about whether this RPL should be moved to the IMC for their work to help improve liquidity for the protocol. So that is one option. Go and have your say on that one as well. That's not a vote, at least not yet. But yeah, pretty important votes, and the combination of a lot of hard work behind the scenes, drafting and redrafting and sentiment polls and calls. So it'd be great to see a good turnout for these votes.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad you mentioned that, and kind of recognizing that people are maybe getting a first look or first knowledge of them here, unless you've really been following the Discord or the DAO forum quite heavily. But I do think it's probably one of the things we really should start to get the message out on these things, because in my opinion, they're very critical. I mean, the first one obviously is it changes the balance a little bit, at least in terms of the financial balance with the ODAO. But more importantly, I think it's the first time we actually have that charter. I know in the beginning we might have been referring to it as a constitution. I think charter is probably a better terminology for it, but it really starts to define and start to set in at least wet concrete a little bit here the ethos of what these two DAOs are meant to do and so forth. So, I just highly encourage. And take some time, I would definitely encourage it for these three. I can't think of any more potentially powerful proposals yet to have actually come forward to the Rocket Pool voting process yet. I mean, the only one that I think might be even on par with it personally is the one about the minimum RPL level. But these here, I think, are definitely going to be, institutional game changers.
Yeah. You did cut out a little bit for me in the middle, but I still managed to get the gist of what you're saying. Not sure if that's on my end or yours, but yeah, we will put out a call to action very soon to get as many eyes on this and votes coming through. One thing also worth repeating here is that I suppose this is one of the first significant kind of external signals of the mission to scale back and hopefully, if the technology supports it, eventually one day remove most or all of the ODAO's tasks to further, streamline the protocol, make it even more decentralized. So this is kind of the first step on what is going to be, I think, an ongoing mission for the coming months, hopefully not years, but you never know. Kane has been working on a couple of things I think we've mentioned on previous bi-weeklies in terms of how new technology around either ZK proofs or optimistic proofs to kind of execute those tasks in a better way. So
yeah, excellent. And it's kind of neat to see the beginning first steps in that. And I think it's going to be a little bit of a long and complex journey. I don't think anything is easy in this space, but it's great to see we're taking the initial first steps to kind of bring that to fruition and kind of the final vision of how we envision Rocket Pool to be fully decentralized. So this is I think a great first start here.
I think there was one more point on governance. Those are the main topics for sure. And yeah, as you said, it's been a busy. Well, a lot of this has kind of just cropped up in the past few days. Certainly, a big chunk of the bi-weekly, once it's published, will be on this topic of governance. There was also a little bit of discussion, especially around EIP 7002 and what effects that might have on the protocol. Specifically, the whole idea of force exiting mini pools. So there's been a little bit of a back and forth there on the DAO governance forum, a post from about 3 days ago. Certainly an interesting topic and one that could really provide some benefit to the protocol. So if you have any thoughts, jump in there and have your say. We've certainly seen some other protocols out there launch or plan to launch with this as kind of an assumption. But for Rocket Pool, obviously, we always put like safety and security first and want to make sure that we fully understand what's going on and how it relates to the protocol before implementing everything. But good to have that discussion sooner rather than later.
Yeah, perfect. One thing in kind of watching the trading channel here before we jump into to the media and marketing side, which I know is your favorite part of the call there, Mav. But Drez.eth just posted a while back that Rocket Pool just passed the 3,000 number for the number of node operators. So I guess just a little recognition of congratulations that we've passed the 3,000 milestone there. That's incredibly impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty great. I think I saw a couple bits and pieces on Twitter as well as I was loading up this space. So yeah, pretty great milestone. And there was some commentary in there around how it essentially acts as a bit of a moat for the protocol. Again, a topic that we've kind of talked about quite a lot on these spaces, but a lot of people talk about being permissionless. Unfortunately, to date, there has been comparatively not a lot of real progress in that area. So every day that this continues, sorry if that wasn't clear in terms of like other protocols, the longer this continues and the longer Rocket Pool is kind of the only real viable option for people wanting to operate a mini pool, a validator with less than 32 ETH, the more that that moat kind of firms up. So yeah, 3,000 milestone is a great example of that.
Yeah. Well, let's maybe talk a little bit about the media and marketing area. What are some of the things you want to kind of highlight and start off on this area?
I guess probably the first thing to note is something that won't make its way to the biweekly once it's published, and that is that there has been some more chatter around kind of a topic that we've touched on a little bit earlier around, I suppose, Ethereum's decentralization and its ability to kind of operate as a credibly neutral blockchain and avoid censorship in terms of which protocols or companies ETH is being staked through. So earlier, I would say probably a week or 10 days ago, there was another kind of burst of activity. Actually, I feel like it was probably just around, not long after the previous biweekly was published. But yeah, there was a lot of chat on Twitter on that topic. So it's, I guess, is a good sign that so far this hasn't died. I mean, I know people in general, and I'd put myself in that camp, can have pretty short memories sometimes, and even more so in the crypto world on platforms like Twitter. But every now and again, there's kind of another catalyst to restart this conversation around, where ETH should be staked to ensure that Ethereum continues to exist, essentially. So that did spawn a lot of discussion. Obviously, Rocket Pool features quite favorably in that area, but yeah, we're not going to be covering that on the biweekly. There are a few other points worth talking about, though. Let me just quickly pull up my notes. So there were quite a few calls and panels over the past couple of weeks. Obviously, as usual, we have 2 community calls, one a week, and we had guests on from Tapio Finance and Kian Protocol. So you can check out, of course, the recordings on Twitter. I think there's one that should be uploaded to YouTube shortly, but otherwise, there's always an option to check that out on Twitter itself. There was also an AMA, a pretty good AMA with PancakeSwap, where I hosted a couple of the guys from that protocol. So PancakeSwap have been working with the IMC recently. That one wasn't recorded, unfortunately, following their request. But yeah, that was a pretty good call if anyone was able to join that one. And then we had Langers flying the Rocket Pool flag on a couple of panels. So one hosted by Origin DeFi, who we've had on as a guest in the past, and that recording is available on Twitter. And then another hosted by Swell, and there is a recording also available on Twitter. Obviously, once the biweekly is published, you'll have access to all the links to easily find and listen to these panels if you missed them live. Probably worth reiterating now in case anyone has joined the space kind of halfway through. We did have a panel that was scheduled for after this community call in about an hour or so. Unfortunately, that has been cancelled it may crop up in a couple of weeks' time. I think the host was just having a little bit of trouble organizing and scheduling the guests. Yeah, unfortunately, we've kind of moved around what we've been doing for this call to accommodate, but not the end of the world. I do see Langers has just jumped on the call. There's a few more marketing topics to cover, not too many. So maybe we'll go through them now and then can pass over to Langers if he wants to kind of recap some of the R&D topics that have been going on.
Yeah, before you jump there, Mav, one question about these staking panels that I kind of had, and I apologize, I haven't been able to attend all of them. A lot of them are in times where I'm sound asleep. But just curious, is it a whole bunch of different moderators or organizations that are hosting the staking panel, or is it a single organization or aggregation that's doing multiple panels, or is it a mixture of the both? Where are all these staking panels coming from, and why are they so popular?
Yeah, that is a good question. First of all, there's certainly kind of a range in terms of the quality of these panels. I think part of it, honestly, is people just wanting to jump on the latest narrative a little bit. Most of the time, there's a pretty good discussion that comes out of it because there is a lot to talk about when it comes to liquid staking, and that seems to increase over time. It's not a quote unquote narrative that's fading away, but yeah, it kind of just depends on who is hosting. You usually see kind of the same faces that crop up in terms of the protocols themselves, or I suppose at least DeFi protocols who are building products that integrate with liquid staking tokens. So some of the different approaches to these panels range from pretty generic, where everyone just jumps on a stage and talks about their protocol, through to some of, I suppose, potentially more edgy topics, talking about those concepts of credible neutrality and censorship resistance, which have been mentioned a little bit lately. So yeah, a bit of a range, that's for sure, but always good for a listen, I think. And I find that I always learn something new, even if it's from the rocket pool side, or alternatively how other people are looking at things that we're involved in so much, but to get a different perspective is always useful.
Excellent. What are some of the other areas of our media and marketing that you want to kind of highlight that's coming up?
So a couple other points. One, a blog post that went out about the Atlas upgrade. It's always interesting to read these pieces written by third parties because Rocket Pool, it may not look at from the outside, but it is a pretty complex protocol, as I think we all know. So it's always good to see when someone gets it at the very least mostly right. But yeah, a bit of coverage there in terms of looking back on Atlas. We're also hoping to get some reporting done at some point in the future to kind of quantify and highlight some of the performance statistics that Atlas has helped to unlock, because in terms of the 3,000 node operators, TVL, and amount of rETH minted, everything's been ticking along pretty nicely since Atlas. And I think there was one other point, maybe a couple. So one is Nexus Mutual DAO. So they have a couple of signaling votes live now on their snapshot voting portal, and it is to look at staking some ETH with Rocket Pool. So this is also another trend that we've seen, and some of the DAO members, the community members, have been doing some great work in terms of spreading the word about rETH as either an alternative for DAOs to diversify their liquid staking token holdings, or if they're just sitting on ETH, to put their ETH to work, help to secure Ethereum. Obviously, the reward helps as well that they'll earn, but to do all of that in the most decentralized way. So there's a couple of, as I said, signaling votes up on the Nexus Mutual forums. So far, it looks like there is a decent amount of yes votes coming through, signaling kind of an interest to stake some ETH with Rocket Pool. So it'd be good to keep an eye on that. Looks like their voting is already, I think it's just closed overnight. So pretty good outcome there, and we'll have to keep an eye on Nexus Mutual to see whether they minting rETH or quite a different way. We might see one of those whale notifications come through on Discord.
Yeah.
And this is probably a good time to get Langers up as a speaker, if you can. Otherwise, I will attempt to talk a little bit about something that I think Dave announced a few weeks ago, saying that there may be a new team member joining, and the kind of time that he mentioned was this week. So,
And it looks like Langers is also able to just join. Darren, can you hear us? I think you're still on mute. Well, Mav, it shows that Darren's a speaker, but still on the mute sign here. I apologize. You might have to keep going here while he works out some technical difficulties.
Oh, well, this isn't...
Hello. Sorry.
Oh,
I am here.
Too many buttons to push.
No, I was trying a different setup and it completely failed. So I just fall back to the trusted headphones instead.
Well, excellent. Well, it's great to hear your voice. We want to cover some of the R&D sections, but Mav was just speaking about Dave's previous mention of a new team member. So I don't know if either of you want to continue on that topic.
Oh yeah, actually that announcement. I think we were supposed to get that announcement out yesterday, but it will go out today. So it's really exciting. I don't want to preempt it too much, but it's a new kind of ecosystem sort of position. So essentially, you could call it a BD position, but we've called it ecosystem because that's much more DAO friendly. And a little bit more fitting to what they're actually going to be doing is kind of like developing the ecosystem rather than, actually kind of like developing business.
Excellent. And then not to have you kind of spill the beans or anything that you want to wait for the official announcement, but what can you share more about it? I mean, for those not familiar with business development or ecosystem, like what do you envision this person doing, and kind of where will they kind of fit in? Are they going to be mainly externally facing, or will they be interacting with the community member or DAOs, or maybe share us a little bit more about what is this position? Help us understand it a little bit more.
Yeah, so I mean, the primary kind of goal really is to promote the kind of ecosystem around Rocket Pool. Now, that's a really quite vague sort of goal, and that's a little bit by design because some of it is we're going to have to feel out as we go along, because nobody's really, very few people have done kind of DAO stuff before, but the idea is that it's mainly around so a lot of what Mav and I do at the moment is we talk to protocols, we kind of integrate with them, we do the co-marketing stuff, we do very little outreach at the moment, so which is something we want to kind of like change as well. A lot of protocols come to us, but it's really kind of like managing that pipeline of integrating with DeFi protocols, integrating with wallets, integrating, across the whole ecosystem of Ethereum. Really, L2s is another area as well. Kind of managing those relationships, developing those relationships, maximizing those relationships, I guess. And in terms of how they'll work, that's the part that's a bit fuzzy. So they will probably do a bit of active kind of outreach and kind of relationship management with the different protocols and that sort of thing. But they'll also kind of work with the community to figure out who they should be reaching out to, or even using the community to outreach as well. We're going to find where those lines are in terms of the responsibility. In terms of the core team, again, we don't want to kind of like, we still want to give room for the community to be able to contribute, but at the same time we want to kind of provide that support. So that's kind of where they're going to be sitting, but we're going to kind of like feel as we go.
Yeah, perfect. And one of the common questions that always seems to come through general or whatever is there's an outreach by either some DeFi finance protocol, or perhaps it's a DAO, and they'll ask a question, hey, I have this proposal, or I want to talk to somebody, and who do we send them to? Right now it's pretty easy, we just send everybody to Mav, but having a little flow chart or a little Q&A thing so the rest of the community can point them in the right direction would be great. But I think it's great to actually have a responsible staff team member to be able to do all this work. It's I just give absolute credit to a number of the community members that have tracked and integrated with DAOs and convinced them of the benefits of using a decentralized LST to hold some of their treasury in. And, I think it's going to be great to actually have somebody whose job it is to do that instead of just relying upon the volunteerism of the community.
That's right, exactly. It gives a little bit more kind of, as I said, more support in that area, and more kind of push as well, which is good because this person can actually really drive that, and the person is a very senior person, so they can actually really drive that forward.
Okay, and then just because I know everybody's going to be asking. Everybody's dying to know, and so it sounds like you're going to release it in an announcement in the protocol here. And when can we expect that? I mean, everybody's starting to look through the threads, see who joined here, who's the new member, has anybody been added to the orange color before they go crazy trying to dissect it and put their detective hats on. When will we know the announcement, and by whom?
Well, you'll know kind of like in our daytime today. So. I'm not quite sure exactly when, because it depends on Dave's just got to finish up the post and that sort of thing. So I don't know exactly what time, but it'll be in our daytime today.
Oh, perfect.
And we've been secret squirrel, so that they're actually in our team chat at the moment. Kind of like we're just kind of like getting them set up, but they're not orange at the moment because of that reason.
Interesting. They might even be listening to this call right here. But I for one look forward to meeting them both in the trading chat, as well as maybe having them on a guest on one of the community calls by Jasper or myself. It'd just be great to get to know them a little bit more. Yeah,
for sure. We'll definitely sort that out.
Excellent. I think that concludes the media and marketing, but we skipped over the R&D section. Mav, do you think we should go to the R&D?
Apologies, I didn't quite manage to get any notes typed up for R&D, but I'm sure Langers will have a few minutes to kind of share some of the things that the guys have been working on.
So in the R&D stuff, so we've got Kane's working on the PDAO voting stuff. So what this is, so currently with the PDAO, obviously we have the signaling mechanism, which is a snapshot, so that the PDAO can actually signal intent for steering the protocol. But there but the PDAO itself doesn't have any on-chain power at the moment. So one of the things that we're doing is kind of basically building out that on-chain power. So that means being able to change particular settings within the protocol. It also means changing things like the budget categories. So being able to set, where the PDAO treasury goes to and that sort of thing. So, does it go to the IMC, the GMC? How much does it go there, and all that sort of stuff. So they're the kind of like the primary things that get controlled by this. And so yeah, we've gone through, we have kind of like bounced some stuff off the community as well. But we're getting into like the design of it. I think what we're going to do is, so we've got a workshop today just to kind of like wrap up our end of it. I think we're going to try and release it out to the community fully to see what everyone thinks. Because it's quite a complicated sort of design. I think it's good because it keeps the voting weight and everything all the same. But we'll kind of put it out there and see what people think.
Okay, and then in terms of other R&D stuff, I guess maybe it's not quite R&D, but you're also doing some recruitments for some technical positions or position. Any update you could share with the community about that recruiting effort?
Yeah, so we went through a whole heap of resumes and that sort of thing that came through. We went through and screened all those. We've been doing initial kind of like telephone interviews, not telephone interviews. What am I, 1990? We've been going through and doing like initial interviews with people, and that's going really well. I think we're actually at the last one. Oh, we got one last one to do next week actually. But we've gone through like this. So we've gone through the majority of them now. So Dave and I are going to kind of put our heads together. Actually, I'm off for the next few days, so we'll kind of put a hold on it for those 3 days. But on Monday, we're going to get together and basically come up with where we're at. So to that note, it's been really good. We've got some really great candidates, and how the recruitment process goes is we have this initial interview, then we have like a full interview with kind of like less people, and then essentially from there we'll be able to offer. So from here it'll actually go very, very quickly. The first part is quite difficult because you have to kind of go through a lot of screening, but the last part actually goes very, very quickly. So we'll be basically doing the second round from kind of next week.
And there were some rumors of this perhaps being a multi-hire. Is there any truth to those rumors, or are they just unsubstantiated?
It's up in the air at the moment. I'm not going to say yes or no. It's possibly.
So there may or may not be some truth to it. Oh, excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear that the...
glad I cleared up that uncertainty.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that the recruitments are going so well, and you've had such a well-qualified applicant pool. That's great in a way, but I know it also makes the decision very hard at the end there. So hopefully it comes to a very successful recruitment, and I'll be just as excited to learn who those candidates are. Do you expect, looking a little bit at the crystal ball, that those will wrap up by the end of the month, or?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, in terms of like actually off to the offering stage, yeah, it should be easily by the end of the month. When they start really does depend. It depends on what their notice period is and obviously their circumstances. So we won't know that until after we kind of do the offering and all that sort of thing.
All right. Well, let me ask you a little bit about the upcoming next release, right? I was kind of laughing a little bit in the biweekly. There was mention of somebody doing an article on Atlas, and to me that just seems, I know it wasn't too long ago and tremendous amount of work, but it just seems so so last decade to me, even though I suppose it was only months ago, right? And everybody's looking forward to the next release. And I guess just a question for you, Langers, because we haven't had you on the call in a while here. I guess one is there officially a name for that next release? And if so, what is it? And what do you think is going to be in there? Has the team started to kind of whittle that down yet, or is that also up in the air?
So, so I think the working name at the moment is Saturn, and it will. So, what it's got in it. So we've got a whole bunch of stuff that we want to put in it. It's whether we can. So at the moment, it's going to be the priority is the PDAL voting. Kind of voting stuff, and then there's a whole bunch of kind of like smaller things that we want to put in there, but until we want to kind of like get some of the design stuff out of the way so that we know there's no kind of like landmines, but we should be able to put these in there, like, so maybe just bring up something. So it's basically the PDAL voting stuff. There's also a separate RPL withdrawal address was one of the things as well. So there'll be like an ETH withdrawal address and an RPL withdrawal address. And sorry, 1 second. Oh yeah, there we go. Potentially a stake ETH on behalf of, but we need to kind of scope that out a little bit, and then just kind of like small improvements. So the main thing really would be this PDL voting stuff. Now, so all the good stuff that we're working on actually requires Cancun. So one of the things that we're working on is that we might do this release before Cancun, which is Saturn, and then do another one after Cancun. So that's the working kind of strategy at the moment. But things can change a little bit depending on. There's a few things that can change. It's mainly around. We need to get into the design to make sure there's no kind of landmines. But that's kind of like the working design that we've got at the moment, is that we'll try and do a release before Cancun, and then we'll do a release after Cancun with some of the really cool stuff in. Now, we've been working on the PDAL voting stuff. We've also been working on some of the stuff that comes later on as well. So actually, I should say that Kane's also been working on the thing that different people call different things, but we call it the mega pool, which is that whole kind of like single mini pool contract per node operator. So that's another thing that we're working on as well. So at the moment, we're doing a lot of design work to try to kind of like lay out the land a little bit. And once we've kind of like done some of the design work, then we'll be able to properly scope the releases and do some proper kind of like release management stuff. But until we kind of have a little bit more certainty on those different areas, we won't be able to. But that's kind of what we're working on at the moment, is those like two releases. A lot of the ODAL stuff that we're talking about could be in that second release, or it could be in like a third release. We're trying to try to figure out where that is. So we've also been working on the ODAL stuff around reducing their duties and that sort of thing. And Nosha's we've been working with Nosha on that.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I like the idea of kind of staging these things with some kind of expected launch window, right? And so I think if I understood your comments right, it's get the things done that you can do reasonably in the time frame pre-Cancun, and then the things that are dependent upon the inclusions in Cancun, mainly a lot of the kind of work of the beacon chain information on the execution layer, right? Do those in a release afterwards. But then I'm just kind of curious, it's probably something you might have to work on in parallel, right? It's not wait till Cancun and then work on the things. You kind of have to almost work on both releases, right?
Yeah. And now we are already. So from a design perspective, we do it in parallel. So we've been working on like the PDAL stuff, and then once we hit like a roadblock there, we'll go back to something else, and we kind of like we're kind of moving between the different things. Plus, some of them have some sort of interaction with each other as well, but or like techniques that we have to use in different places. So what we have at the moment is kind of horizons. And those horizons say that, before Cancun, these are the things that we could probably release because they don't rely on Cancun. Then after Cancun, there's these things that we can release, but it just depends on what size of release that we want to do at that point, and whether those things that we're trying to deliver have dependencies on each other and that sort of thing. So that's why we have to do a fair amount of design work up front to try to map all of that out.
Yeah, interesting. And I suppose you're going to now have to ask Joe, who I think is the official namer of these releases, right? What do we call the release after? I was asking Chatbot, and it had told me Nova was the rocket after Saturn. So, but you'll have to get it from Joe. I think he's the official arbitrator of these things. But yeah, that'd be very interesting. Now, I know I've been paying a little bit of attention. I don't think there is a release yet date for Cancun or Dancun, however they're naming this thing here, but they have released that DevConnect is coming up. I know the team was kind of debating a little bit the return versus benefit of that, but with the release of Cancun and so forth, will the team have anybody there at DevConnect, or is this going to be one you'll sit out and just attend virtually for it? Do you see any value this year for that one, or is this a pass?
That's a great question. So it's something that we've kind of been heads down on other things, and mainly around like the recruitment stuff. I think we need to kind of lock down what the next few events are going to be. So we were going to be attending Mainnet in New York. That was going to be the next event that we were going to go to. We've decided not to do that now. DevConnect is still on the list of things that we might still do. So we haven't kind of made a decision on DevConnect yet, but we will kind of try to lock that down so that we can actually attend properly. That's where we are at the moment. Like the only thing we know is we'll definitely be doing DevCon next year. But until then, we haven't really kind of locked down any other events. But maybe East Denver we're very keen on doing again. But we want to do another one before then. It just depends on which one it's going to be.
Yeah, I think Batches was hoping you would make that New York event, but yeah, I'm laughing at his comment in trading there. But yeah, no, it'd be great to be at ETH Denver, and yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the team decides about DevConnect not attending the one in Amsterdam. I don't know, but I know how critical it is when all the core developers are there, because it does seem, and I'd be kind of interested, maybe as the last question here, not to take too much of your time, but there are, I think at least in my recollection, a number of core Ethereum proposals that all seem to have some impact to Rocket Pool, either in a beneficial or perhaps a non-beneficial way. What's kind of your take on some of these things, and what is the team doing to kind of stay abreast of all these EIPs and various modifications to the core Ethereum protocol?
Yeah, so Cancun is amazing for us. I would say mainly because of 4788, which is the Beacon State Root EIP. That's the big one for us. I mean, 44 I can't remember what the numbers are. Anyway, proto dank sharding is definitely awesome, but I don't think it necessarily has a massive impact for us, and at least not in the short term. May well be in the long term. There's another one in there which was the voluntary exits. So having a voluntary exit so at the moment voluntary exits they expire after something like 2 hard forks or something. There's an EIP in there that basically makes them that last forever. So that does affect us. It's actually probably, to be honest, it probably helps centralized stakers more than it does us. Not that that's the aim of it, obviously, but in the sense that it doesn't help us directly. It does help us from a tooling perspective, I think. So from the smart node perspective, we'll be able to generate like a voluntary exit, and you'll be able to keep that as a backup, so that if you ever lose your node key or whatever, you'll be able to then exit your validator. So that's a cool thing that we'll be able to add in potentially. But it doesn't actually help us. I don't think, at least, it helps us at the protocol level. 4788 really does. I think all of the cool stuff that we're doing after Cancun. So mega pools, reducing ODAL duties, and there's a lot of ODAL duties, but pretty much all of them can kind of like go. Pretty much all of them can go with 4788. So it is, it's amazing for us for kind of making Rocket Pool more trustless and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah, and just as a follow-up to it, because it did seem that a number of these things were much more beneficial, right? I think there was only one that was not even, that was only kind of thought about, that was maybe adversarial to EH&S or detrimental to Rocket Pool, excuse me. But many of them seem to be, like you said, just very, very advantageous to Rocket Pool in terms of accomplishing its mission of being decentralized, right? And so I wonder if you could just share a little bit about like how is the team like actively following these things? Are you in the ETH research channel, or as a member of the team? Is there forums or discussions, or how does Rocket Pool actually track and comment or advocate, or maybe I use the word lobby if that's not a bad word, for these inclusions in there?
So we've kind of had conversations with researchers kind of on and off for the last year. So we've been obviously things have been raised on forums, and we've kind of commented on forums. To be honest, the better things that have happened is that we've actually met people on the ground. So DevCon was really, really good for us. DevCon's always good for us because we get to talk to the core devs and EF not just EF researchers. There's a lot of researchers as well as the people working at the EF. But it's really talking to those researchers and putting things on the map. And that really helped. DevCon last year really helped with that. We've spoken to kind of like Danny directly on a few things, and kind of like pushed what we think decentralized staking protocols need, which obviously if we can support decentralized staking protocols, then that's a better future than not. So there's been a lot of kind of like, but essentially it's a bit of kind of like forum work. It's a lot of like talking to people over Discord, and it's a lot of the real gains kind of talking to people in person, and kind of like working through things with them.
Yeah, I bet. And it seems like the space is much more active than I could just think of how hard it was to kind of track, one EIP over a long term. But now to have a successive series of EIPs, all that kind of interact with each other and sequentially actually might be all kind of riders on the Cancun, bus upgrade. How they have kind of riders and drivers with proto sharding being the driver. It seems it must be a very busy time for the team to kind of track and determine all these things.
Yeah, to be honest, I struggle to kind of like keep up with the all core devs meetings at the moment. But yeah, no, it's been good, and also like actually, I should say that the community pushes us in the right direction as well, in the sense that if we often when we miss something, someone in the community will post it, and so that kind of like surfaces that information to us as well, that's invaluable because as I said, we can't be everywhere, so it's really great that the community kind of like surfaces that information for us, so that we can kind of like jump on it and act on it, or just get across it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we start to bring this call to a close here, it's already been going for about 90 minutes or so. But Darren, anything that we haven't covered yet, at least in the section that you've been part of, that you want to make certain that the community is aware of?
Actually, as I can see, kind of like Noshua's here. A big thank you to Noshua. Like we've been working. Noshua's been doing a lot of work on obviously the research side. It was kind of like funded from the GMC, but the stuff that they've produced has been really, really good. And so Kane and Noshua have been kind of like bouncing off each other to in terms of like the implementation and kind of side of things. And so that's been going very, very well, and that's kind of informed what we're doing in terms of, well, not just informed, it's driven what we've been doing in terms of the ODAL duty reduction stuff. So, I mean, that's something that's kind of coming later, but it's certainly very, very exciting, and we'll try and get more information as and when we can do it, as and when we can release it.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. It does not surprise me at all that Nashua gets such a shout out there, because reading through some of that work that he's done on there, it's just absolutely excellent. So I can imagine how valuable it is for the team, and how well thought out and well phrased and explained the process was. So thank you, Nashua, for all the efforts on that. I guess as we kind of bring the call to a conclusion here, one other question, Darren, you mentioned was ways that the community can kind of help tracking some of these things. And any other ways you could think of the community doing some help that would help the team at kind of this critical part to either not only track these EIPs or any other aspect that you think is very helpful for the team that the community could either continue to do or double down on its efforts to do even better?
Yeah, I mean, definitely keep an eye out for things that you think might be interesting, and then kind of like post them so that we can be across them. That is definitely helpful. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, no, participate in discussions. It's important. DAOs don't govern themselves; they require kind of active participation. So participate in kind of like the governance stuff that's going on, which you'll be able to see in the bi-weekly. There's a lot of stuff in there around like the governance and that sort of thing. Yeah, at the moment, no, it's good. At the moment, I think the team is very, very excited about the future. Because there's so much good stuff in the roadmap. I think that's one thing that we need to probably get out reasonably. I'm kind of reluctant because I have, as I said, I have the horizons, but they're not kind of like locked down to releases and that sort of thing. But we could probably put something out around what we're thinking in terms of the roadmap, particularly even just like the prioritization part of it, because obviously we spent a bit of time kind of prioritizing that with the community. So to kind of like draw a line under the prioritization, we could probably put something out about that. But yeah, I think it's going really well. The team are really excited about the future. There's some really great stuff coming up, and we're just really looking forward to working with everyone on getting that out and refining it and co-developing it with the community.
Yeah, I would certainly support and second that. I think like roadmaps are only the best laid plans, but even just having some initial, like you said, organization to it in terms of what is in what release or targeting what horizon, event horizon, that would be great. But yeah, it'd just be great. And I'm especially thrilled to have you on the call here. It's been a while since we've had you on, and it's just kind of great hearing your perspective. So thank you for coming on and sharing with us.
Oh, thank you.
Mav, anything we haven't covered yet on this call as we bring it to a conclusion?
I think we're pretty good, thanks, Ken.
Okay. All right. Well, I, for one, am going to be excited to see the announcement today and to find out who the next ecosystem integrating lead is going to be. So I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. Awesome.
All right. Well,
Thanks
it's been a
very much, Ken.
Both of you, and for everyone listening here, I'll talk to you all in trading.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
See you, everyone.